Hi, everyone. My name is Vincenzo Berghella. Thank you very much to tune in to a new edition of AJOG MFM Highlights. We'll highlight the November issue of 2025. Thanks, Mo, for co-moderating. Welcome again. How are you?
Great. Nice to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another issue for AJOG MFM. Thanks so much for joining. I'm a maternal fetal medicine specialist at Tufts Medical Center in Boston and the MFM Fellowship Director at Tufts. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our format, we go through all of the fabulous work that's been published in this last month's issue, and then we select 4 articles that we want to highlight for our viewers and our readers. And we try to select articles that apply for management or counseling of patients either on the labor floor or pregnant patients in the office. And we do also try to identify papers that apply not only to our MFM colleagues, but also could be very helpful for our other OB providers, such as the generalists, midwives, advanced practitioners, and family medicine docs. So we have a list here of the articles, and we're using visual abstracts, either created by the authors or that I've made myself. But we encourage you to read the articles in full on the AJOG MFM website. And we'll have Vince, why don't you kick it off with the first one?
Thanks, Mo. So the first one compares sequential versus misoprostol only labor induction and sequential group A, or women that first get the Foley, a balloon, and then misoprostol to follow. And the other group, this is a randomized controlled trial, gets misoprostol only. And you can see the results in this slide made by the authors. In the key outcomes, basically that if you use a balloon first, you end up using less misoprostol doses. You may have more choreo, but also you may have higher incidence of vaginal delivery. And you can see the vaginal delivery rate in their graph being higher with using both the Foley and the misoprostol. I really think this just adds to a lot of other evidence that, we used to use only one agent, let's say a balloon only or misoprostol only, etc. And I think especially this combination, using a balloon and meso, not even sequentially, but you can use them at the same time. There are randomized studies that you can use them at the same time. It's associated with a lot of outcomes. And I would think compared to this trial, again, using them at the same time will be associated with more vaginal delivery, shorter labor, and not the increase in choreo that they showed. But this adds to this evidence of please consider using 2 agents, balloon and misoprostol, instead of either alone.
Excellent. The second paper is from a group in Malaysia, and this is looking at the routine vaginal exam to be scheduled at either 8 hours or 4 hours in low-risk multiparous patients. This was an RCT done in Malaysia. And essentially, I think the general practice has been when someone comes in early active labor or early labor before 6 centimeters, that we typically are doing a vaginal exam every 4 hours to assess their progress. But, vaginal exams are not tolerated by all patients. And there's also a concern that maybe we're doing too many exams, and that is leading to additional interventions that are not necessarily needed. And we don't have a known ideal frequency of when we should be doing these vaginal exams. So this group chose to randomize low-risk multiparous patients who had full-term singleton pregnancies who were in early spontaneous labor, somewhere between 3 to 5 centimeters with regular contractions. And once they were admitted, they randomized to either have a scheduled vaginal exam at 4 hours, like the typical practice, versus planning to do their next vaginal exam at 8 hours. And the primary outcome was to see if this had any change in the time interval to birth. And then they also were evaluating a number of secondary outcomes, and they also wanted to check in on patient satisfaction. So what they found was that it was non-inferior to the time interval to birth. Interestingly, both groups had a median time of about 3 to 4 hours from when they were admitted in labor to when they delivered. So it was challenging to do an 8-hour vaginal exam because most of them were delivered. And no change in the cesarean section rate, which is good to know. Understandably, there were less number of exams if you were in the 8-hour scheduled group, and less numbers of needing Pitocin augmentation and epidural rates. Interestingly, there was decreased patient satisfaction in the 8-hour group, and that may be, a little bit complex. Is it due to the fact that many of them actually delivered before 8 hours, so they felt like they weren't getting the care they needed, or is it a specific thing with that patient population? Most of them needed an interim exam due to like decels or wanting an epidural, feeling an urge to push, things like that. So that ended up kind of affecting those results. But I think that what this shows is that, this contributes to the literature in understanding that 8 hours might not be the ideal time, but we should try to maybe assess this in other patient populations, and perhaps also the nulliparous population would be a good one to study of what is actually the ideal frequency of vaginal exams once someone's admitted in early labor. So a very interesting question, and I look forward to more studies on this.
Next paper looks at maternal, fetal, and neonatal serious adverse events associated with low-dose aspirin during the first trimester of pregnancy. So we use a lot of low-dose aspirin now for prevention of preeclampsia in particular, but even for prevention of preterm birth and other outcomes. There was a large trial called the aspirin trial that actually started in which aspirin was started very early, sometimes less than 11 weeks. As you can see, over 7,000 people started before 11 weeks. And basically, this was a safety secondary analysis, and it showed no significant differences in maternal, fetal, or neonatal adverse outcomes if aspirin was started before 11 weeks. We actually, in our practice, usually started at 12 weeks or so, when they come in for the NTE scan. We know that many interventions, the earlier you start them, the more effective, they may be. Take progesterone, for example. I think it's great to know that this is safe, and I can see maybe a change in practice in the future if this indeed is shown to be more effective, the earlier it started. And Mo reminding me that, we're in an era in which Tylenol has been unfortunately, brought up as unsafe, which I think it's not true. Tylenol is safe in the first trimester, and now we have information that low-dose aspirin is also safe in the first trimester, which is always good to know.
Excellent. And our final paper is a little bit different than the RCTs and meta-analyses that we have presented in the past. This is a personal perspective written by Dr. Mike Foley, who has been a very successful MFM over several years, currently in Arizona. And this is a reflection called Broken, Finding Strength and Value in Imperfection, a reflection of a maternal fetal medicine physician. And, what he describes is this idea of quote unquote brokenness, where patients have an unexpected diagnosis, complex fetal anomaly, some devastating prognosis, and we as MFMs have to share that news and then help guide a patient through their pregnancy journey. And how we take these moments to explore our capacity for presence, for empathy, for meaningful influence on our patients is really what brings us personal fulfillment as well as growth, and the same for the patient. So there are two stories that he shares, and I'll briefly touch on them, but I encourage you to read the article in detail. The first is from Chinese folklore, and it describes an old woman who is gathering water from a riverbank, and she carries 2 pots on a rod on her shoulders. And one pot is perfect, it's smooth, it has no cracks, and it holds the water all the way from the river to her home. The other pot has a lot of cracks, and every day she fills it up, and every day, by the time she gets to her house, the pot is halfway empty. And this goes on day after day. And the pot that has a lot of cracks is feeling very sad and ashamed. And it says to the old woman, I'm really sorry. I have all of these cracks and I'm just so ashamed of who I am and what I am. And she says, no, I love your cracks as they are. Do you see these beautiful flowers that come on your path? Because every day I have, you water these seeds and they have these beautiful flowers that can bless our table at home. And so, I think what we take from this is that these journeys of unexpected diagnoses, when we can bring that compassionate care, we as physicians can get these flowers, these deep connections and personal growth, both for us as well as for our patients. And we can find some nice things, in these very, very difficult moments. The second is a story from Japanese tradition, and it describes a samurai who had this beautiful, delicate porcelain cup, and it breaks. And he sends it for repair, and it comes back, and it's all put together. But he feels that something is a little off, something's a little different. And he doesn't like the cup as it is, even though it's put back together. So what he does is the samurai melts gold, and he intentionally fills all of the cracks with gold. So now you see this cup and it's put back together, but all of its cracks are out there for everyone to see. And in that moment, he has transformed this cup and kind of not only made it stronger from its reinforcement from the gold, but have it own its history of who it is. And so this reflects the concept, the Japanese concept of kintsugi, which is where loss is viewed not only as failure, but as an opportunity to reframe as stronger, more beautiful, and uniquely marked by its history. And I think that really reflects what we can do as MFMs in helping pregnant patients through their journeys is acknowledging, their loss and their grief, but also kind of watching how they own this history and they really can transform their life as well as ours. So a really beautiful piece by Dr. Foley, kind of showing how the success as an MFM is not defined only by cure or correction, but by bearing witness, by offering dignity to patients, and by honoring the full arc of a person's experience. Really encourage you to read the article in detail. It's a beautifully written perspective.
Well, Mo, that was great. This concludes our sessions today. Again, you can listen to this on podcast, and I think this last couple of minutes where Mo went over stories will do great on podcast. They're really wonderful stories. So, we're not only evidence-based and scientific care, but it needs to be caring, compassionate, and you did a beautiful job, Mo. And thanks, Mike, for the input. So we'll see you next month in December.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.